The silent prisoner. The emergency lights in Europa Station's abandoned research wing pulsed like dying heartbeats against frost-covered walls. Lieutenant Marcus Rhodes adjusted his thermal suit's settings, watching his breath crystallize in the frigid air. Behind his helmet's visor, proximity alerts blinked warnings about the structural integrity of the ice-encased corridor ahead. "Command, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures," he reported, studying his wrist scanner. "Nothing matches known patterns." Static crackled through his comm unit. "Proceed with caution, Lieutenant. Remember, this is just a routine sweep." Routine. Right. Nothing was routine about an underground research facility that had gone dark during humanity's first interstellar war. The Frost War, they called it, though the name had nothing to do with Europa's perpetual winter. It referenced the cold, calculating way their enemy had appeared from nowhere, struck without warning, and vanished just as mysteriously 3 months ago. Marcus moved deeper into the facility, his boots crunching against sheets of ice that shouldn't have formed in a climate-controlled environment. The war might be over, but its shadows lingered in places like this, forgotten outposts and abandoned research stations that held secrets no one wanted to claim. His scanner chirped, drawing his attention to a sealed door at the end of the corridor. Unlike the rest of the facility, this section showed no signs of damage or decay. The control panel glowed with a soft, purple light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with something beyond the door. "Command, I'm picking up biosignatures." He paused, double-checking the readings. "They're unlike anything in our database." "More static, then, maintain position. Backup is en route." Marcus stared at the door. The purple light seemed to beckon, almost like it was alive. Protocol dictated he should wait, but something about this felt urgent. Important. Like standing at the edge of a discovery that could change everything. He overrode the lock. The door slid open with a whisper of escaping air, revealing a chamber that defied logic. The walls were covered in crystalline formations that seemed to grow from within the metal itself, casting prismatic patterns across the floor. In the center, suspended in a field of purple energy, floated a being that took Marcus's breath away. She appeared humanoid, but her skin was translucent, like living crystal. Veins of light pulsed beneath her surface, creating patterns that reminded Marcus of ancient circuit boards. Her eyes were closed, but as the door sealed behind him, they opened, revealing irises that contained what looked like entire galaxies. "You're late," she said, her voice resonating through his mind rather than his ears. It carried notes of authority and ancient knowledge, like listening to a symphony composed of starlight. Marcus lowered his weapon without conscious thought. "I wasn't aware I was expected." "Your kind has been expected for millennia." The being's gaze fixed on him with an intensity that made his spine straighten involuntarily. "I am Vexera, last keeper of the resonance. And you, Lieutenant Marcus Rhodes, have just stepped into a war far older than the one you think you've won. How do you know my name?" He stepped closer, noticing that her restraints weren't physical but comprised of pure energy. "The same way I know that in approximately 3 minutes, your superiors will realize you've entered this chamber. In 4 minutes, they will initiate containment protocols. And in 5 minutes. A small smile curved her crystalline lips. "Well, that depends entirely on you." Marcus's scanner suddenly erupted with alerts. Multiple signatures approaching from above. Heavy equipment. Armed personnel. "They're coming to ensure I remain buried," Vexera said calmly. "Your people discovered things during your war, Lieutenant. Things they weren't ready to understand. Things they've hidden here, along with me. Why should I trust you?" Marcus kept his voice steady, though his heart raced. "You shouldn't. Trust is earned, not given. But ask yourself this, why would they hide me in a forgotten station on Europa if they weren't afraid of what I might reveal?" The facility's emergency systems suddenly blared to life. Red lights replaced purple. Marcus's comm unit crackled with urgent orders to evacuate immediately. Vexera's eyes seemed to glow brighter. Time's up, Lieutenant. Will you leave and preserve the comfortable lies you've been told about your war? Or will you stay and learn why your enemy really retreated, and what's coming next? Marcus looked at his weapon, then at the door, and finally at the crystalline being who spoke of wars and truths with the weight of ages in her voice. In the distance, he could hear the heavy footfalls of approaching troops. He made his choice. Breaking chains. Marcus worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the control panel that maintained Vexera's energy restraints. The sound of boots on metal grew closer, echoing through Europa Station's frozen corridors. They had maybe 2 minutes before security forces breached the sector. The third sequence, Vexera guided, her crystalline form shimming with increasing intensity. Your military adapted this technology for my people, but they never truly understood it. The purple energy field flickered and died. Vexera descended gracefully to the floor, her feet touching down without a sound. Up close, Marcus could see that what he thought was simply translucent skin was actually a complex lattice of living crystal, each facet containing swirling patterns that seemed to move with her thoughts. "We need to move," he said, checking his tactical display. "They're sealing off the..." "Wait." Vexera pressed her hand against the wall. The crystalline growths that had overtaken the chamber pulsed in response. "Your people weren't the first to imprison me here. This facility was ancient when your species first looked to the stars." A hidden panel slid open in the wall, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. Marcus's scanner couldn't penetrate its depths, which either meant heavy shielding or something his equipment wasn't designed to detect. Probably both. "This way," Vexera said, already moving toward the opening. The resonance paths still remember their purpose, even after millennia of sleep. Marcus followed, his tactical training warring with his growing certainty that he'd just thrown his career away. Maybe his life. "You said they adapted your technology. The weapons we used in the war were pale imitations of the Concordat's art." Vexera's voice carried notes of both pride and sadness. "Your scientists found fragments of our civilization buried in Europa's ice. They thought they'd discovered weapons, but they were looking at instruments meant to sing to the stars." The tunnel twisted downward, leading them deeper into Europa's icy crust. The walls here were different, smoother, older, with faint lines of light pulsing beneath their surface. Marcus's suit sensors registered temperatures far warmer than they should have been at this depth. "The beings you fought weren't your true enemy," Vexera continued. "They were scavengers, drawn by the echoes of power your experiments released. What you called the Frost War was merely the first ripple in a pond that hasn't seen disturbance in 10,000 years." Heavy doors slammed shut somewhere above them. Emergency alerts flashed across Marcus's helmet display. The entire facility was going into lockdown. He switched off his comm unit as it filled with orders demanding his immediate surrender. "Why tell me this?" he asked, ducking under a low-hanging crystal formation. "Why trust me?" Vexera paused at a junction, her galaxy-filled eyes studying him with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "Because you asked why. In all my years of imprisonment, through all their interrogations and tests, not one of your kind asked why. They demanded how. They insisted what. But they never cared to understand why." The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that stole Marcus's breath. Enormous crystalline structures rose from floor to ceiling, each one humming with internal light. They formed patterns he recognized from his tactical training, strategic deployments, defense grids, but on a scale that made military formations look like children's drawings. "This is a map," he realized. "The whole moon is a map. More than that." Vexera approached one of the largest structures. "It's a warning. Your people found one outpost of the crystalline Concordat and nearly started a war that would have awakened forces beyond their comprehension. But they didn't find our greatest weapons, or our deepest secrets." She turned to face him, her expression grave. "They didn't find the resonance core." Marcus studied the chamber, his tactical mind processing implications. "And now something else is looking for it. The scavengers you mentioned. We're only the first. Others will come, drawn by the songs your scientists forced from our sleeping instruments. Unless. Unless what? Vexera's form pulsed with internal light. Unless we awaken the true resonance. Not as a weapon, but as it was meant to be, a shield, a symphony, a bridge between stars. She held out her crystalline hand. But I cannot do it alone. The Concordat built failsafes into their systems. They require both the Keeper's song and a voice freely given from another race. A harmony of choice, not conquest. Heavy explosions rocked the chamber. Above them, Europa Station security forces were burning their way down. Soon they would reach the ancient tunnels. Marcus Rhodes, Vexera said, her voice carrying the weight of ages, I offer you a choice. Help me prevent a war your people don't even know is coming, or return to your superiors and live with the knowledge that your silence helped bring it about. Marcus looked at her outstretched hand, remembering every strange report from the war, every inconsistency in the official narrative, every odd reading his sensors had picked up during battle. All the pieces were falling into place, forming a picture too terrifying to ignore. The chamber shuddered again. Time was running out. He reached for her hand. The price of truth. The moment Marcus's hand touched Vexera's crystalline fingers, the chamber erupted with light. Energy coursed through his body, not painful but overwhelming, like standing in the heart of a star. His tactical display went wild, then dark, then rebooted with symbols he'd never seen before scrolling across his vision. What's happening? He managed to ask, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. The Concordat systems recognize you now, Vexera explained, her own form blazing like captured aurora. They're adapting your technology to interface with ours. The process is inelegant. It was never meant to work with such primitive systems. Before Marcus could object to the word primitive, a new explosion rocked the chamber. This one was different, not from above, but from below. The crystalline structures around them chimed in alarm, their harmonies creating patterns of warning in the air itself. They're here, Vexera whispered, her galaxy eyes widening. The scavengers. They followed the resonance trail faster than I predicted. Through the newly recalibrated display in his helmet, Marcus saw them. Shapes moving through the ice beneath the chamber floor, dark forms that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His military training screamed at him to raise his weapon, but he knew instinctively it would be useless against these beings. The Void Hunters, Vexera named them, her voice hardening. They consume crystalline technologies, corrupt their frequencies. They're what remains of a civilization that tried to weaponize the resonance eons ago. Now they exist only to devour what they once sought to control. The chamber floor cracked. Dark tendrils of anti-light began seeping through, reaching toward the nearest crystal formations. Wherever they touched, the humming structures went silent, their light dimming to nothing. We need to move, Marcus said, already pulling them toward the far exit. Where's the resonance core? Deeper. Past the old defense grids. But we can't reach it directly now, the hunters will expect that. We need to. She paused, her expression shifting to one of revelation. Of course. Your people's experiments. Where did they conduct them? Marcus brought up the station schematics in his display, now overlaid with the ancient map's data. Research Lab Delta, 2 levels up. But that's where security forces are. Perfect. Vexera's crystal lattice pulsed with determination. The experiments left traces of active resonance. We can use them to mask our true destination. The hunters will be drawn to the stronger signal. More cracks appeared in the floor. The dark tendrils were spreading, forming patterns that mirrored the crystal formations above, a twisted reflection of the Concordat's technology. Marcus's newly enhanced sensors screamed warnings about spatial distortions and quantum instabilities. They ran through ancient corridors that sang with fading light, past chambers filled with technology that defied human understanding. Marcus's military training kept his breathing steady, but his mind raced with implications. The Frost War hadn't been a war at all, it had been these creatures, these void hunters, testing humanity's defenses. Learning about the crystal technology Earth had stumbled upon. "Your scientists," Vexera said as they climbed through a maintenance shaft, "they nearly triggered a catastrophe. The frequencies they forced from our sleeping instruments sent ripples through spacetime. Like playing a symphony without understanding that the notes could reshape reality." "Why didn't you warn them?" Marcus asked, helping her over a fallen beam. "When they first found you?" "I tried. But they saw only weapons and power. When I spoke of harmony and resonance, they thought I was speaking in metaphors." Her expression darkened. "They didn't understand that the metaphors were literal. That reality itself is a song, and the Concordat learned to sing with it, not to it." They reached a junction. Above them, security forces were sweeping level by level. Below, the Void Hunters were corrupting ancient systems, turning the moon's crystalline network against itself. They were trapped between human fear and ancient hunger. Marcus checked his ammunition. Standard rounds wouldn't do much against either threat. "We're running out of options." "No," Vexera said, placing her hand against a seemingly solid wall. "We're running out of time. There's a difference." The wall shimmered and became transparent, revealing a vast vertical shaft that seemed to stretch infinitely up and down through Europa's ice. "This is a resonance conduit. The Concordat used them to channel energy through the moon's core." "Let me guess," Marcus said, noting how the crystalline patterns along the shaft's walls matched his new tactical displays. "We're going to jump." "Jump implies falling." Vexera's galaxy eyes sparkled with something almost like humor. "We're going to sing." She stepped into the shaft, pulling him with her. But instead of falling, they began to float, surrounded by patterns of light that responded to Vexera's presence. The crystals in the walls hummed in harmony, creating a field of energy that carried them upward with increasing speed. "The research lab is a decoy," Marcus realized as they ascended. "You're planning something else." "Yes." Vexera's voice was solemn. "To save your world and awaken mine, we must do something far more dangerous than face the hunters or your military." She met his eyes. "We must tell the truth. All of it. Even the parts humanity isn't ready to hear." Above them, alarms blared as security detected their movement. Below, the darkness spread, consuming ancient songs note by note. And somewhere in Europa's depths, the resonance core waited, its true purpose still hidden beneath layers of ice and secrets. Marcus checked high. Echoes of resistance. Research Lab Delta looked like a war zone even before they arrived. Crystalline growths had burst through the walls, their light pulsing erratically in response to both Vexera's presence and the approaching Void Hunters. Shattered equipment littered the floor, and in the center of the room stood a massive device that Marcus recognized from classified briefings, the resonance amplifier that had started the Frost War. "They tried to replicate our technology," Vexera said, approaching the device. "Like children finding an ancient instrument and hitting it with sticks, hoping to make music." The device hulked before them, a twisted marriage of human engineering and salvaged crystal technology. Its core pulsed with an sickly orange light that made Marcus's enhanced sensors scream warnings about quantum instabilities. "Commander Rhodes." A voice rang out from the lab entrance. "Step away from the asset and surrender immediately." Admiral Durham stood in the doorway, flanked by heavily armed security forces. Her face was a mask of cold fury, but Marcus noticed something else in her eyes, fear. Not of him, not even of Vexera, but of something else. "They're here already, aren't they?" Marcus asked, keeping his position between the security team and Vexera. "The Void Hunters. They've reached the surface facilities." Durham's expression tightened. "That information is classified. Like the real casualty reports from the Frost War." Marcus interrupted. "Or the true nature of the weapons testing that sparked the conflict. How many ships did we really lose to the Hunters, Admiral?" How many crews vanished into that darkness while Command fed us lies about alien aggressors? You don't understand what's at stake, Durham snapped. The crystal technology is our only advantage. Without it, the hunters might leave you alone. Vexera's voice rang through the lab, carrying harmonics that made the crystalline growths pulse in sympathy. They're not here for territory or resources, Admiral. They're here because you woke something that should have stayed sleeping. The frequencies you forced from our technology didn't just attract their attention, they opened doors that were sealed for good reasons. As if in response to her words, the shadows in the corners of the lab began to move. Dark tendrils crept along the walls, absorbing light and sound. The security team's weapons tracked the movement, but their hands shook. They'd seen this before. The resonance core, Durham said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. That's what you're really after. Our researchers found references to it in the ancient data banks. A power source beyond anything. Not a power source. Vexera placed her hand on the amplifier, and its sickly orange glow began to fade, replaced by the pure light of her own crystalline form. A seed. The last seed of my civilization, planted here when we realized what was coming. What our own arrogance had awakened. The shadows were taking shape now, forming into tall, angular figures that seemed to bend light around them. Void hunters. Their forms were like tears in reality, negative spaces that hurt the mind to look at directly. The security team opened fire, but the bullets passed through the creatures without effect. The Concordat didn't build weapons, Vexera continued, her voice rising over the gunfire. We built gardens. Songs that could shape reality, heal worlds, bridge the gaps between stars. But some, like the hunters, saw only the power. They tried to force the songs to destroy. Instead, they destroyed themselves, becoming what you see now, empty things that can only consume what they once were. Marcus's tactical display was going haywire, showing energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. The amplifier under Vexera's hands was changing, its human components falling away to reveal something older, purer. Last chance, Commander, Durham shouted as her team fell back from the advancing hunters. Help us contain this, Anne. Contain this? Marcus laughed, a sound of genuine disbelief. Look around, Admiral. Look what your containment has brought us. It's time to try something else. Something better. The Void Hunters struck. Their dark forms surged forward, consuming light and matter alike. But before they could reach anyone, Vexera began to sing. It wasn't sound as humans understood it, it was pure frequency, pure resonance. The crystalline growths in the walls joined her song, creating harmonies that made reality itself shiver. The hunters recoiled. For the first time, Marcus saw something like fear in their void dark forms. Symphony of Stars. Marcus's voice joined Vexera's, and Europa sang. It wasn't like any music he'd ever known. The harmonics poured through him, transforming his simple human voice into something that resonated with the very fabric of spacetime. His enhanced tactical systems translated the frequencies into patterns he could comprehend, galaxies spinning in harmony, stars pulsing in rhythm, the quantum dance of reality itself expressed through crystalline song. The Void Hunters screamed, their negative space forms rippling with distortion. The sound they made was anti-music, the entropy of dead stars given voice. But they weren't retreating. Instead, they began to merge, forming a singularity of darkness that threatened to devour everything in its path. Hold the harmony, Vexera instructed, her crystalline form blazing with internal light. The core is awakening, but it needs more. It needs memory. Through the resonance, Marcus understood. Each crystal formation contained not just energy, but experience. The history of the Concordat, the songs of 1,000 worlds, all preserved in lattices of living light. His enhanced vision showed him glimpses, garden worlds suspended between stars, crystal ships that sailed on solar winds, civilizations that had chosen to join their songs with the Concordat's eternal symphony. Admiral Durham's security team had fallen back, their weapons useless against both the hunter's darkness and the transforming crystal formations. But Durham herself stood her ground, watching with an expression of growing wonder as the lab's harsh military architecture dissolved into flowing crystal geometries. All this time, she whispered, we thought we were building an arsenal. You were cultivating a garden, Vexera's voice rang with joy and sorrow intertwined. Your experiments caused harm, but they also prepared the soil. Sometimes destruction must precede rebirth. The Void Hunter's combined form surged forward, a wave of anti-light that consumed everything in its path. But where it touched the crystalline growths now spreading through the station, something unexpected happened. Instead of dying, the crystals began to resonate at frequencies that made Marcus's heart ache with their beauty. The hunter's darkness was being transformed, note by note, shadow by shadow. They were part of the song once, Vexera explained as her hands moved through the air, conducting energies Marcus could barely comprehend. Before fear turned them to hunger. Help me remind them, Marcus. Help me show them what they once were. Marcus let his voice rise higher, no longer trying to understand the harmonics but simply feeling them. Through his enhanced vision, he saw the truth Vexera had been trying to tell them all along. The resonance core wasn't a weapon or even a power source, it was a seed of pure potential, waiting for the right combination of voices to help it grow. The crystal formations reached the station's surface, breaking through ice and steel to touch Europa's eternal night. They caught Jupiter's light and transformed it, sending beacons of impossible color streaming into space. The hunter's darkness began to fracture, not breaking but transforming, their void shapes gradually filling with starlight. The choice was always yours, Vexera said, but she wasn't speaking to Marcus now. Her words resonated through the crystal network, reaching every corner of the station, every shadow where the hunters lurked. As it was ours, eons ago. To consume or to create. To dominate or to harmonize. The song never ended, you simply stopped listening. The combined hunter form shuddered. Within its darkness, points of light began to appear, like stars being born in the depths of space. The anti-music of their presence began to shift, discordant notes gradually finding their place in the greater symphony. Admiral Durham dropped her weapon. Around the lab, other soldiers did the same, their faces transformed by awe as the crystal structures grew more complex, more beautiful. Through the resonance, Marcus felt the change spreading beyond the station, through Europa's ice and into space itself. The garden was awakening. The frost war, Durham said, her voice thick with realization, it wasn't an invasion at all. It was pollination. The first steps of a new movement in an eternal symphony, Vexera agreed. Her galaxy eyes met Marcus's. Your voice helped us remember the melody. Now, shall we show them the harmony? The resonance core bloomed. Crystal spires erupted from Europa's surface, not destroying the human stations but incorporating them, transforming dead metal and cold stone into living crystal that sang with the voices of stars. The Void Hunter's darkness dissolved completely, revealing their true forms, beings of pure crystalline light, their ancient songs restored. Marcus felt the change in his own body. The tactical systems weren't just translating anymore, they were becoming part of a greater pattern. Humanity's technology, the Concordat's crystals, even the restored hunters, all finding their place in a symphony vast enough to encompass them all. What happens now? He asked, watching as the garden spread across Europa's surface, each crystal formation adding its voice to the growing chorus.